Although I'm a licensed professional counselor in the state of Texas, this podcast is not therapy and should not be used as therapeutic intervention. Many of the products and practices mentioned are for educational and informational purposes only. Should you need support, please seek appropriate, qualified, and licensed professionals. Hey y'all, welcome to Between a Hot Mess and a Therapist, the podcast where we navigate the murky waters between what society expects and what it means to truly live, embrace the messiness, the beautiful chaos of life, and celebrating the rebellion in the process. Whether you're a recent graduate, a seasoned therapist, or someone just curious, there's something here for everyone. But before we dive in, make sure you join the Hot Mess Rebellion community where you can connect to other like-minded souls. I'm your host, Shauna Lovin, a seasoned therapist and wellness educator with a very rebellious spirit. So grab your favorite beverage, get comfortable, and let's dive into today's rebellion. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Between a Hot Mess and a Therapist. Okay, so continuing on with this theme that I have started about hormones, we're going to continue that today because that is an important topic connected directly to our mental health. So I'm just going to apologize to all my male folks out there because this is technically not for you. But if you choose to continue to listen, you should learn something for the lady in your life. So let me start off by saying that if you didn't know that I'm also a wellness educator, and part of what that comes is specifically talking about hormones and how that looks with fibroids, PCOS, endo, and PMDD in particular. Because there's a lot of people that talk about infertility. There's a lot of people that talk about, trying to have kids and all these other things. And I'm in a totally different space when it comes to that and how that looks for women, because there is that link to mental health. So if you didn't know, your cycle is the 5th vital sign. It's just like when you go to the doctor, they check your pulse, they check your oxygen, they check your heart rate, do your blood pressure. They check all these things because it helps give kind of like an overall picture of how you're actually doing. Well, your cycle is one that is technically not checked the same way the rest of your health is. Now, yes, your OBGYN when you go see them, or your GYN when you go see them, that's probably the closest you're going to get to check in the same way you would with the rest of your health. So the reasons why this is your 5th vital sign is because when there are problems in your body, it shows up in your cycle. Let me repeat that for the people in the back. When you have problems in your body, it shows up in your cycle. So think about when your cycle is too heavy or too light, or how many days are you having? Are they too many? Are there too few? Think about the color, the density. These are all the things that kind of happen when you have any type of more medical or other issues within your body. It shows up there and you have to look at those areas in particular. There's others, but that's a good place to start. If you don't know what quote unquote normal is, then that's the first place that you have to start. You have to know what are the guidelines that says this is what a normal cycle is. Now, I'm not saying that is true for everyone because, we're all individual and it all looks different. But if you have a general idea of what that looks like for, say, the norm or the masses, or what they say in the textbook, not that I really believe that, but if you know that, it helps you understand, do you fall within the norm or kind of outside of that already? Because then that gives you an indication of where are some things that I need to look at. Because when you start looking at the issues that you have with your cycle, those are the same indicators that tell you maybe what's linked health wise. Okay, so now that we've got the basic kind of out of the way, there are lots of links between our mental health and our reproductive health as a whole. It is so intimately connected. It's ridiculous. It's from like, think about the fluctuations you have in your mood, the sex drive you have, the self-confidence you have, the reproductive hormones and how that is impacting if you can have a baby or not. It impacts our emotion in so many positive and negative ways. Like the list is so long that it's kind of hard to like really think about what each detailed thing is. It's the best way to kind of describe it is, if you didn't know that menopause is, or perimenopause, it's just something that happens on the back end of things. But there's like 180 something different symptoms that you can have if you are going through that. And so not everyone looks the same. Yes, there are people in this world that say it's not real, but let me tell you, I know from personal experience that it's real. So think about how the connection between mental health and reproductive health are. It's like the studies show that anxiety, it's like the appearance, it shows up like as anxiety a lot of the times. Let me rephrase myself. It's kind of like, think about your appearance, your negative body image that kind of comes up. And you know, it can change throughout your cycle because your cycle is up, it's down, it's like freaking all over the place. And people will try to tell you, oh, you just need to balance your hormones. Well, that's not true. You can't technically balance your hormone because depending on where you are in the cycle, it's up, it's down, it's all over the place. So there's the happy medium that we want to achieve. But I say that because there is no hormonal balance. Okay, so the symptoms that we can think about that kind of come along with, you know, how our cycle is doing would be like, are we depressed? Are we feeling fatigued? Are we like happy? Because, you know, there's that link with, you know, the hormones for happiness, for serotonin, you know, what does that overall space look like? And then when you think about on the other side, like when we're kind of like on the back end of our cycle, you know, you may be feeling more positive, more confident, more connected. Like just think about when you sit down and think about or start how your cycle actually looks. And it's going to tell you all the things that you need to know what's going on with you personally. And so whether your mental health changes or are the cause or not, it's just important that what you feel or what's going on with you has a valid reason for actually happening. Because it may be very mild in nature, but it's still happening for a reason. So I've kind of come up with like 5 ways where you can kind of manage your mental health through your cycle. So the first one would be track your cycle. If you're not doing that already, then how do you know what's actually happening? So tracking your cycle is the most crucial step that you can do in this whole process. Because again, when there's changes, when there's fluctuations, it's telling us how our well-being is doing and how we're feeling overall. When you understand that there are certain changes and certain like symptoms or pains throughout the month, when you're tracking it, you kind of can anticipate it from month to month, like when this happens. You can anticipate like, oh, I'm typically sleepy, you know, this first part of the month. Well, hell, no shit, Sherlock, because you're losing a lot of blood. I mean, come on. So think about how it looks throughout the month and just track that. There are plenty of apps that you can use. You can kind of write it down like old school in the calendar. You can do whatever you need to do to just track it. So that's the first step. The second step would be is to get yourself a daily exercise regimen. Now, if y'all been following me any length of time, y'all know I don't like exercise, but I say that because it's any form of movement. So yoga and walking in particular are probably our friend, but when we have regular activity kind of like in our schedule, we are reducing our PMS symptoms, we're boosting our mental health, and we're just improving our overall sense of well-being. So that's why I say get a little movement in your life. The third one is let's get some quality sleep. Now, y'all know I love me some sleeping. And I know when it's good sleep, you feel really good. And so a good night's sleep on a regular basis is important to having good mental health. A lack of sleep reduces our energy, we have negative thoughts, and then it just makes us feel crappy and our PMS symptoms worse. Now, if you struggle with getting good night's rest, think about like when you were a kid and you had your routine before bed so that you could get ready for the next day. That's essentially what you have to do. So think about just like getting off your phone, an hour or so before bed or computer. And, maybe you need to take a shower or a warm bath at night. Try not to have caffeine after 2, making sure you're eliminating the blue lights and just your room is nice temperature, not too hot, not too cold, but a good comfortable. So those are just some things that you can look at because there's a whole process happens while we're sleeping that is important to our overall mental health, which is why we need to get good sleep. The fourth one I have on my list is creating mindfulness techniques or mindfulness practices. Now I'm going to expand this and say embodied or mindful embodied practices. Now, if you've been listening for a minute, so the embodiment piece is just kind of like what's in your body and like presenting in your body and being connected to your body versus mindfulness is definitely paying attention without the judgment. So if we're doing some mindful embodiment practices, it's the same stuff we do for self-care. It's nothing new, but it's just how are we doing it or how are we paying attention to it? Because when we are mindful, we are conscious about our emotions, our relationships we have with others, and just our general, our world around us. So like your inner world, like with your family and friends, as well as your outer world with like community and, your neighbors, kind of like the outside folks. It's a helpful tool. So this is mindfulness is a helpful tool to process our emotions and feel more at peace, especially when we're stressed. So get mindful. There are so many ways that you can practice mindfulness, and that's not what this episode is about, but find ways that are good for you to practice that mindful embodiment. Again, in the mind and the body at the same time. The last one I have on the list is eating a balanced diet. Now, I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole about all the things that are happening in our world today. But just think that what we ingest is also creating some type of regulatory process with our hormones. And if we're eating toxins, if we're eating crappy food, if we're not drinking enough water and, managing our salt intake, our caffeine intake, our alcohol intake, then all we're doing is just making things worse. And that's not what we want. Now, I'm not going to tell you how you need to eat, but I'm just going to remind you that when we are in moderation and when it's maybe on the more healthier side, and I'm not going to say organic just because not all organic things are great for you either, but find the things or foods that kind of elicit more of a healthier, balanced diet. I'll just leave it there. So, how do we know when we need to start asking for help? So, again, if you know what normal is for a cycle, it's easier to understand how you fall within the norm or outside of the norm. And that's always a good place to start. Now, you can go to your OBGYN when you're having trouble. Yes, they're going to help you. Maybe some aren't, because some are not versed in, say, fibroids, PCOS, endo, or PMDD. They have no idea. And so just understand that you can be an advocate for yourself, and that when you're an advocate for yourself, you can tell the doctor or you can tell the professional that you're working with, hey, this is what I think is going on with me. Let's check it out. There aren't any for a lot of our medical conditions, there's all these blood work that you can do. And when it comes to having a healthy cycle, there really isn't one. However, some of the blood work that they can do, it shows are you within that range place? So that can be helpful. And then there's some times where you are within the range, but you still feel crappy and there's a lot going on. So again, check in with yourself, check in with your body. I hope this was helpful for somebody. Until next time. Thanks for joining today's rebellion with me. Remember, it's okay to be a hot mess sometimes. It's all part of the journey. Until next time, stay rebellious, stay authentic, and keep embracing the beautiful messiness of life. Don't forget to join the Hot Mess Rebellion community, where you can connect with other like-minded souls. And anything mentioned in today's episode will be linked in the show notes. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you subscribe, you share with a friend, you leave a review, and you keep coming back for more. This podcast was brought to you by Healing Roots Wellness and Botanicals. For more information, please visit healingrootswab.com.